All right, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. This is the second episode of the Prepared Family Podcast. I'm Joe with the Idaho Prepper Channel, and this is Jenny with.
Homestead Healing.
And yeah, I know it's been a while. I was thinking we were going to get this show out once a week. I was way off.
Sorry.
It's all her fault. But at least we got it out today. It was a crazy day. We're having winter storm warnings right now. So getting a lot of snow finally, which is good because it's been a really light winter for the most part. And I was kind of worried, like we don't have enough snow for our waterways. Mm-hmm. So I don't want it to be a dry year. I like it when we get a lot of snow. It's hard, but it's better to have a lot of snow or water in the ground. And
it's hard on a Sunday when they don't plow the roads and you have to go somewhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're definitely not been good about keeping the roads plowed, but
especially on the weekends.
Yeah. What else? So you've been busy. Jenny's been doing OCIA,
which is becoming Catholic, basically. So
for those of you who don't know,
yeah. So Joe was raised Catholic.
I was raised Catholic, and Jenny just wanted to go back to church. I was kind of not. I had so much going on. I was just being really lackadaisical. Didn't think it was kind of like important, and you started really pushing it and feeling like it was something that we needed to do as a family, and I was just like finally gave in and was like, all right, fine. Well, if we do it, let's just go to the Catholic Church, because we had actually tried like a few different Protestant churches and we just weren't feeling it. And
I wasn't either. The music and it just wasn't quite.
Yeah, the atmosphere is just off. Felt more like motivational speaking and stuff. So I'm not really into that that type of church. So we went back to the Catholic Church. We've been going back for it's been like 2-3 months.
It's been a year. Oh,
really? No.
It's been a year that we've been going to the church.
Is it really? Gosh,
but consistently, I would say closer to 3 months.
Okay,
so we've been going every week.
Yeah, okay. Consistently.
There you go. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the off and on I didn't really count.
Okay.
Because when we started out, it was like we went and then we didn't go for months.
Holidays.
We were missing it all the time. Mm-hmm. And then we finally just got serious. We're like, we need to get serious about this and start going every single Sunday. No more messing around. So you've been busy with that, and that's been a good thing. And it took a while. Thankfully, we started doing that because it wasn't until I don't know, the first consistent month of going that I start feeling like, wow, this is critical. Where has this been? How could we have not been doing this as a family, especially? It's like every, week we go, I'd be sitting in church thinking I can't believe we weren't doing this.
Yeah.
So it's really critical part of just being a family is just having your family at church every Sunday. So
yeah, we got our younger 2 kids baptized in December, and then I'm homeschooling our older daughter for her sacramental prep so she can become Catholic too, because our older 2 kids were baptized non-denominational, so it wasn't like a, what do you call it? It wasn't, it didn't really count as a baptism to the Catholic Church, so we had to redo that.
Yeah.
So it's, that's what
but
we're doing.
we're all locked in now, and it's good because we go on Saturdays at 5. We do a 5:00 mass on Saturdays, and then we go out to dinner afterwards or do something as a family. So it's just so good. It's just become such an important part of our family structure.
Yeah, going on Saturday night made a big difference too, because trying to get them up in the morning on Sundays and rush them out when they just want to be lazy and watch TV or whatever.
Especially if it was snowing outside. It was
stressful, and then
it's hard to get to the church.
You have to leave really early. There's not a lot of parking there at the church either. It's in a neighborhood, so it was tricky. And so when we started switching it to Saturdays, which we were going out anyway, it was fun for the kids because we'll take them somewhere fun after and get a treat or something. So now they are doing better there too.
Yeah. So as far as this platform goes, I know, well, this is only our second episode, so we're still trying to figure out what we want to do with this. If we're just going to keep it as a YouTube channel, which I think we should do since it's already in a video format. I don't want to just make it like a primary podcast, even though that's what it is, and you can download it and listen to it if you guys want. But I guess you could do that with YouTube videos too. You can download videos. But anyways, right now it is a podcast format, so it's not going to come up on my feed as a video. It's going to come up as a podcast, I think. It was kind of tricky to get it to actually format that way. So if you guys want to see this show, you're going to have to go to the podcast feature on my YouTube channel to watch it. And if we decide later on to create a YouTube channel just for this show, we might do that. But I think what we should do is just grow it on this platform first, since I have an audience on my channel, and then maybe if it gets popular, we can transfer it over somewhere else. But I just don't really have the energy of starting just totally raw, creating a whole new channel. It's just creating YouTube channels. It seems a lot easier than it is. Yeah, it's definitely not as easy as a lot of people probably think going into it. Like, I'll just start a YouTube channel and make tons of money. Doesn't work that way.
I think the podcast is technically unlisted though, so I'm not sure if they have to go through the link that you add, because you didn't want it to pop up as a video.
Yeah.
So it's still a little tricky. There's some details to work out on that, but
yeah. So eventually the channel, as it grows, we're gonna get better lighting. Probably, I don't know, the audio seems to be doing okay. I upgraded the mics. I think they're doing okay. I just got to remember to charge them before the show starts. But and then we'll get some better chairs. But I think right now the backdrop's pretty good. You know, the fireplace that I made. You guys like it? But
I do.
But yeah, maybe definitely got to get some more comfortable chairs.
Yeah.
Jenny's chair is about to break.
It totally is. I had to like fix the screws because it was like,
yeah, if I was sitting in it
break.
It would have been shattered, but for sure. Yeah. So eventually we'll get some more comfy chairs.
That'd
but
be good.
Other than that, you know, we'll see what happens. But either way, we'll let you guys know where we go with this channel. But for today's topic, we're going to be talking about raising children in this day and age. And in particular, it's raising Gen Alpha. So I'm actually not sure when Gen Alpha started, but all three of our kids are in Gen Alpha.
We should have looked that up.
So it's right after Gen Z. But younger kids, who knows? I mean, they're so young, we don't know what their future is going to entail. Hopefully it'll be a positive one. I know it seems kind of grim. There's a lot of stuff on the horizon that doesn't look good. But I think what's changing as quickly as things are getting worse, it seems, things are getting better. And at the head of that, I believe it is platforms like this. I know that seems like kind of, it just seems kind of arrogant to say that or whatever, but it's true. It's because I think having average people speak their minds and be able to speak their truth and tell what's going on and how it's shifted the culture so drastically and in the right direction that just regular people can put together a platform like this and start encouraging other people, because this is how it's done, to go in a more godly direction, a more family oriented direction, and just put the old methods aside and just and just go in this direction. And I think that's what we're starting to see more than ever, is just this drastic cultural shift for the good. Even though things are getting dark, the minds and attitudes, especially the younger generations, are really changing in a positive direction like they never have before. I don't think the culture has ever shifted this radically back towards God than I don't know, probably in 1,000 years, sometime in ancient history, I'm sure. But
My OCIA class is the biggest class they've ever seen there, they've ever had. And then
yeah,
I actually transferred from another church, and the other church I was doing OCIA in also said the same thing, that it was their biggest group. And they had to keep moving to a bigger room because just
yeah,
a lot of people are coming in to the church. And
yeah. It's growing, and it's younger families. I
Yeah.
ran into a priest. I was actually doing a job, and their kid, their son, was a priest. He's in his late 20s, but we got to talking, and that was one of the first things I asked him is like, are you seeing like a big growth? And he's like, yeah, definitely. Like, it's huge. There's like a mass surge of young families coming back to the church. So very, very positive to see. But
Yeah.
how's that class going? You're learning a lot, huh?
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. It's funny that the class that I was in, the priest at that church was teaching it, and he was really funny, and it was a really interesting class. He just talked a lot more about the history of the class, and the class I'm in now is taught by just one of the parishioners there, and he's teaching us more about the Catholic faith. And so I'm learning so much from both places because I'm still able to listen to the old one on Spotify. And yeah, it's great. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's about an hour and a half once a week. So I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
It's
But
interesting.
so this show is for the most part, it's going to be about us raising children and what we've learned so far. I mean, we are a newer family. Our family started in 2015 with our first daughter, and I mean, so much has changed since then, and I would say for the better, because so much of like the direction we were going, there was so much pushback to our ideals. And now here we are in 2025, and it's like the stuff that we were saying and that direction we were going that was just so hated and pushed against is now almost fully embraced. I mean, it's almost mainstream.
Yeah.
You know, as far as like the whole top, you know, the how it relates to the vaccines, homeschooling, going back to church, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're doing that stuff in 2013, 14, 15, like especially in California where we started out, like you were just totally looked at like a crazy, you know, right wing, you know,
So we moved
extremist.
to Idaho.
Yeah, so we got out of there.
Yeah.
Just sick of having our cars keyed for political stickers, but
That's hard.
but that is pretty much the topic. We'll just talk about the things we've learned. I mean, is there really even much you would have done differently? I don't think so. I feel like when we got into this, I wasn't, because I had no idea what it was to be a father. I mean, I didn't become a father until I saw my daughter come out. You know, my first daughter was born. Then I became a father. I didn't even start thinking as a father until that point. And you had a little bit, you know, women get a little bit of a head start because they kind of become mothers when
when you can feel the baby kicking and stuff. But I mean, I was reading like what to expect when you're expecting and stuff. So I do wish that I had learned a little bit more about about decisions that we decided to make and stuff just before we had kids. But it was just something we didn't even know to look into it. It was that everything kind of came up when it did, and we just had to be like, I don't know, we're not doing this until we figure this out. Kind of pause and like learn and make a decision. So it's just, I don't know.
And thankfully we wait because we're older, you know, older parents. I think that's a common theme now especially with our generation. Mm-hmm. Although I would definitely say that there's upsides to waiting to get older to have children, but there's a lot of downsides to it. And if I were to choose one, I would say start young. There's a lot more to that. Um, but if you have your act together and you're a moral, ethical person and you understand the concept of marriage, then start your family young. But I think it starts with marriage. Before, obviously before a family, you have to understand marriage. And to understand marriage, you have to be religious, and you have to understand commitment, and that's tough, but marriage, I think, is the first thing that you need to learn. And we didn't learn, I don't think I thought I had a pretty good grasp on marriage.
You taught me a few things early on.
Yeah. I had some ideas on commitment, but
Yeah.
as far as the structure, like from a biblical standpoint, there is so much more. Now that we're back to the church and we're starting to realize that so much of it is just biblical. It's like until you actually pick up the biblical teachings of marriage, your marriage is going to be really challenging. No matter how committed you are, I think without religious structure, it's going to be extremely difficult. But that's something that we've found. It's like the more we're kind of starting to pick up those principles and apply them to our lives, the easier it's getting. But growing up where we grew up and how the values, that we're now adopting would have just been so frowned upon. It was like uncomfortable for us to like embrace a lot of the roles that the church is teaching, but
I still haven't even told like all my family that I'm becoming Catholic and that, our kids are Catholic and stuff too.
yeah, because there's so much pushback.
It's still kind of like,
yeah, people just see it as so, oh my God, you're Catholic, which to me is like the heuristic. That to me is like the biggest indicator as to why I was like, that's probably the church to go to. If that's the one that everybody's railing against and ripping their hair about, like, yeah, okay, it's probably a good indication that we should probably be there because our world is just so inverted, Yeah. But I would say it starts there, as far as a family goes, is that it starts with the man and the woman becoming married, and then like grasping that balance with God and that unity and that structure with God as a man and a woman, then parenting. We're just now starting to realize that, and it's like you do that first, and that can almost like lead everything. But trying to do it without those things,
establishing roles and stuff too.
Yeah.
Like, so you're not like butting heads and kind of,
yeah, it's key.
a lot of things.
And it seems so awkward at first, like kind of embracing a lot of those roles, because it just goes against so much of everything that was coming out of the television, the movies, our school, all the different institutions that we were raised in, like our whole society. I mean, growing up where we grew up in California, it was just completely against everything that, every aspect of the lives that we're living now.
Yeah.
Leading now. But I would say, the first challenge, I would say, if you're young, definitely start kids. We were talking today about how, I was actually saw some Facebook post. Somebody was saying it was like some nostalgia post, some group that I follow or something about 80s nostalgia. And it was this guy talking about like how he missed growing up with all these cousins, and how that's not a thing now. And I was like, God, that's so true. Like you and I both grew up with huge families with lots of cousins and siblings. And now it's like our kids have no cousins.
Yeah, and they were all around our ages, my age. My cousins were like just really close in age.
Yeah.
And our kids have one cousin and he's a lot older too.
So. Yeah, one cousin.
Yeah.
And that's it. And like just our siblings, the kids, because we were just told, like, it really goes back to like, when you look back, it was like our education and just pushing, like, it's all about safe sex, and learning about like safe sex, like in third grade, which just seems so inappropriate, but just teaching like contraception and like the last thing you want is to be pregnant. Like, kind of instilling this idea of like pregnancy being the worst thing that could happen. Like it'll just ruin your life. And that was kind of how they were promoting it. Like teenage pregnancy, it was like right there with like smoking cigarettes and doing drugs, the worst things that could happen.
They gave us a little fake baby we had to take home, and like if it cried, we had to take care of it. And they
how horrible it would be to have a baby.
Yeah.
You know, and just trying to teach young girls like see what happens if you have a baby.
Yeah,
it'll be so terrible. Yeah, I mean, and so it's like it's no wonder that our generations were like, that's it, not having any kids. I mean, we're just totally indoctrinated to like not breed.
And they weren't saying not to have sex then either. They were like teaching like safe sex and not having babies.
Yeah.
And babies were bad. It's so
have
bad.
Sex for all the wrong reasons, basically. It's just sex is something that's just meant to be pleasurable, and that's it. And if there's a pregnancy, that's like an unintended consequence of sex always. You know, it's the downside to sex is you might get pregnant. Yeah, but that was pretty much how it was instilled in us. And so fortunately for you and I, we're both kind of, I mean, we're like radical in our thinking that we just radically oppose that and went the other direction. And luckily we found each other that we both wanted the same thing, because that was, rare, and where we were in that, where we're from.
Yeah. I mean, it took a while for us to get to that point though. We definitely had like time before we met and got married and everything.
Like at least a week or two.
No, I mean, where we like were like believing some of the stuff that we were taught and raised. Yeah.
Well, a lot of that had to do with our sobriety.
Yeah.
And just the consequences, the emotional consequences, the physical consequences of living a degenerate life, like living a life where you're just doing whatever feels good. That does not produce good results, and that was our generation. We just grew up like, do whatever makes you happy, what makes you feel good, stay, anything that's uncomforting or making you feel guilty, stay away from that. Like it should always just be feel good all the time, and that had disastrous results, So we ended up in that, living, like I got sober, that lifestyle took a toll on me pretty quick. By the time I was 17, like I was checked, like I knew like this is not a good direction. Things have to change in my life. And by the time I was 19, I checked myself into a rehab, 1 year out of high school. And I was already going to AA meetings in high school. So, and luckily for us too, and we touched on this the last podcast, is the area that we grew up in. It was like a huge young people sober network. So there were a lot of kids that were actually getting sober. So there was a huge support group there, and it made it easy to go in a different direction. But the thing with AA, when you get sober, is, for those of you familiar, the central part of the nucleus of AA is God. It's grasping spiritual principles. You adopt God principles, and the format is Christian based. I mean, they're speaking of a Christian God. A lot of people try to neutralize it and say no, it's not. It can be any God, but you realize, they try to make it. They just try to diffuse it or kind of water it down. But you get to a point where you realize. I remember this one guy always saying, he was like, when you're kicking heroin in an 8x10 cell and you're in the fetal position with DTs and you start to pray for God, you're not praying to a doorknob God. He's like, you start praying to the real God. That God becomes apparent, like all those little wooden if gods, he would say, the doorknob gods, they just float away and you get to understand God. But thankfully we had that little window that put us in that direction to pursue faith and God. And then just doing that, it just grew and grew and grew. And naturally you find yourself, for us, we found ourselves back at church. We found ourselves back in the Catholic Church. And that's where we ended up. And and you know, it's like it feels right, you know? When you're on a spiritual path, it's like people might say, and you're like, how do you know which way to go? You know, you go the wrong way, if you know, and it's like, no, there it is. It's kind of like picking a lock, you know, and you just know when you hit the right spot. Mm-hmm. But where are we? I feel like I'm going off track again. But yeah, raising kids.
This Gen Alpha this time.
See, you're supposed to be thinking of the next thing to say while I'm talking.
Well, we have like an order here, right?
Yeah, so when I run out of things to say, you go.
Well, we were going to talk too about like the media, the TV, the movies, and
oh yeah,
all the things that we have to also watch out for with them.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have to be careful with what they're watching on TV. Most of the stuff, anything newer than 2000 is got a plan, you know, for them. And so we have to be careful with any of that new stuff that's on TV. I think even a lot of the Christian stuff on TV isn't great. So we just try to stick to older 80s, 90s, and older shows and movies that we know are good and that we've watched. And even books, like people will send books, and we have to be really careful to read the books first, because our family members will send the kids books, and they'll just go on Amazon, they'll just order a bunch of books and they'll send them here thinking, oh, they're just kid books, these look cute. But, you know, we look through them, we're like, ooh, this has got a message in it we don't really want for our kids. Yeah. So we're just really careful about anything that comes in and that we're giving to our kids or reading to our kids.
Or letting them watch. Even on the TV, you go to like Disney or like Hulu or Roku, like any of these internet channels, and it's like you might find a good movie. Oh, okay, we got a good movie for them to watch. But then there's these commercials that are just awful and just, you know, it's just implanting stuff. So.
Well, and all the movies now, too, even all the older movies.
Yeah.
Like everything in the older movies, it was all like all the families were divorced. Like all the shows that we used to watch, every family in those shows was divorced. It was a broken family. The dad wasn't there, and
yeah, every single one. And if it was intact, it was totally dysfunctional. You know, it'd be like the mom or the dad's like an alcoholic or cheating, or, you know, it's like just clearly sending a message to like intact families are bad, you know, and if there is an intact family, it only looks good on the outside, but it's really, you know, terrible. And that the happy families are the ones where the parents are separated. And it's like, because we didn't even like, I'm going back to these old movies thinking like, oh, let them watch this one. This will be okay. And I didn't realize it until I went back and start watching these movies from the standpoint of a parent and going, geez, like every single movie, it's a damaged family.
Yeah.
It's a, you know, so it's no wonder what was like, you know, the divorce rate was like 70%. I remember growing up back in the 80s, and my parents were still married, and how odd that was. Like how like I felt uncomfortable bringing, and my friends would come over, like all of my friends, their parents were divorced. Every single one of my friends' parents were divorced. And I remember feeling uncomfortable about it. And they would come over and they were like, you know, I remember expressing like, I wish this was my family. It was so sad. You know, they're like, you know, I'm the one that should feel embarrassed. Like they were kind of saying that, like, trust me, you got it good. You're lucky that your parents are together. Because I remember just thinking, I'm like, it makes me uncool somehow, you know, that my parents were still together. But
yeah, but they're like trying to normalize it in these movies, and you know, we were kind of trying to shelter our kids from that at this point, because they're still kind of young, and we don't want them to be exposed to that and seeing, you know, broken families. And especially, getting anxiety. They've had enough anxiety with COVID and all these other things going on in the world that no matter how much we try to protect them from it, they find out about, these big things that are going on. So stuff like that, we don't want them to be worried that something could happen between us and that their family could.
Yeah, I would say that's like what's at the center of being a parent in this day and age is like you're sheltering your kids from degeneracy. I would say like to summarize what our primary objective is, it's like to protect our kids from the degeneracy that is just being thrown at them, trying to corrupt them through every facet of society, through the television, internet, from society, as a whole. Yeah. Whereas like I would say probably our parents, our generation, our parents' primary goal was like get good grades and go to college so you can make money. That was like the objective, you know? Who cares about anything else as long as you get good grades and you go to college and you get a good job and then make money. Yeah. It was like, don't have kids. Totally, like that should be off the table. Don't even be thinking about that. Too many kids would
cost too much money.
Yeah.
And you won't have as much money. It was just a very big money thing.
Yeah, it was very just money oriented. Make your money. Yeah. And it's just whatever. It's the generation they grew up in. Maybe they grew up probably, and their parents were poor, came through the Great Depression, and their parents probably put that off on them. And it's like, you don't ever want to be poor. It's horrible. Yeah. And so it's whatever. I'm sure this is just the cycle of civilization, but I feel like we're in a pretty unique cycle though. I don't know of any, I'm not like a huge historian, but I don't know of any periods of time that have seen such a radical shift, like culturally from, this kind of decadent, degenerate life into God. It's just happening so drastically. Like we were saying, how the priests are, and pastors are just seeing just this huge resurgence of young people back into the church. And it really is, it's coming from like where we came from the broken, the broken families. And then you have kids and you're like, I don't want them to have the experiences that we had, and then you start going into it and you start realizing, like for me, it was then the pushback to like, where do you think you're going? Like, oh, we're going to homeschool our kids and go to the church. Like, not so fast. You'd think that would be met with like positivity, like, oh, that's good. But it's like, don't pressure them too hard. Don't shelter them too hard because then they'll rebel, let them see these things. That is like always the excuse. They're going to find it out, anyways. So you might as well let them find it in a safe environment.
Get exposure.
Yeah, get exposure to it. Now, I remember that was always the excuse to corrupt kids. Yeah. They're going to have sex anyway, so let's make it safe. Or they're going to do drugs anyways, so let's make it clean. Yeah, it's just, it's totally insane.
Let's let them do it at home, like drink at home or whatever, right?
Yeah.
When we were growing up.
Insane.
Not in my house or anything, but friends' houses and stuff.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Yeah, we were talking about that, how you might grow up, like I grew up in a pretty stable home. Like I said, my parents were both married. It wasn't a violent, it was a good house. I had a good family structure. Everything was good. But I would go out to my friend's house and there it wasn't good. Whereas where I spent most of my time was at school and at my friend's house. And so it almost didn't matter what sort of values that my parents were instilling in me at home. All of that stuff was getting reversed at school, watching movies, hanging out with my friends, being at their house. And it corrupted me. And so looking back, it's like, yeah, I think if I hadn't been exposed to all that stuff, I wouldn't have had the troubles that I had later on in life. But, I was exposed to a lot of toxic stuff, like at an early age. Yeah. And I look at our oldest daughter, who's 9, And I was like telling you the other day, I'm like, you know what I was doing at 9 years old? Like crazy stuff. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't talk about it right now, but it's like terrible stuff at 9. And like our 9-year-old
And they
has
put all
no
these
clue.
bad labels too on us, like helicopter parents, and we're sheltering them. And like
Yeah.
try to make everything, we're protecting them. You know, they're trying to make it all sound so bad.
Yeah,
that
that's going to
hurting
damage
them,
them.
and we're not allowing them to
Don't
have
shelter them.
experiences
Right.
Yeah, so, and it's a huge misconception too that homeschooling is like antisocial, because we are very social. They don't have a ton of friends in the neighborhood because we live out in the mountains, but our daughter just was sledding all day with the neighbors, and you know, we're in 4-H, and they have friends over, you know, in town that we see regularly. So they have a lot of friends, and friends of all ages, and they're good with, you know, talking with adults or kids and all ages and stuff too. So yeah, they're definitely not antisocial or sheltered or anything like that either. They're
Keep going real quick. I got to check something on the camera real quick.
Yeah, we're just protecting them.
Okay.
We're keeping them safe.
Just had to make sure we're still filming.
And they are downstairs watching a movie. Did we mention that already?
Yeah.
So they're being a little loud.
They're on a
On and
DVD,
off
so
right now.
we know
So-
the downstairs TV isn't hooked up to the internet. It's just DVDs.
Yeah.
So
This is the only internet TV, and this is controlled by our phones that are locked. So we
yeah,
are very aware of what goes on this one.
yeah. So homeschooling. So we were saying, and I don't even know how we went in that direction. I don't know how that started, because when we first moved up here, and like I said, like my whole focus when you were pregnant and we were like gonna buy, I knew I was just focused on like trying to make everything work financially. And so that's where my whole head was like, okay, I have this family. I just got to make sure that the lights stay on and the water stays running. That's just, my focus as a man. And
I was trying to make sure I keep the baby alive.
yeah,
I was really
keep it
focused
fed.
on that, at least for the first, 4 years.
Yeah.
Early years.
And thankfully, my plan, on how to make it work financially on my income, it worked. So we paid the house off. We talked about this on the first podcast, kind of how we met and how we moved to Idaho and everything. But that was a key factor in making all this work, was paying off the house and just not having loans, being debt free. If we weren't debt free, it never would have worked. There's no way. Yeah. It still wouldn't be working. So I knew, I was like, I have to get debt free, because I'm just not bringing in enough income. So I knew, I was like, one of two things has to happen. Either I have to bring in a ton more money painting houses somehow, which I knew was almost totally out of the question, and it just wasn't a reliable, viable solution, because painting's so volatile, the economy was so volatile. And so it was either that, or I needed to get the overhead way low. So I went with that. It was like, we're getting our overhead as low as possible. That way, the economy can take hits and everything will be okay. Because at the end of the day, all I got to do, I just need to make enough money to pay the food and the utilities, and then we'll be good. And it worked out. And
Property tax.
Yeah.
Right.
And what that really allowed us to do, and this is why I always encourage, especially young people that want to go in this direction, get your overhead low, because it enabled us not only just to make it financially and be comfortable and sleep at night. I'm not stressed about, things not being paid and being kicked out of a house or something. I couldn't imagine having that worry, but also it allowed us to be in a situation where it was a single income home. So Jenny could stay with the kids all day, and I could be at work. She could raise our children. Our children weren't off being raised by some other, institution. So that was huge. So, if you want to do things, raise kids old school these days, and you don't make a lot of money, this is how you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to get smart early on and pay stuff off so that your overhead is just extremely low. It's or you're going to have to figure out a way to make a lot of money. I don't know. So, but yeah. So that, setting things right financially was just another layer of making everything work out for us as a family and raise the kids correctly. So huge blessing. Just every day I'm grateful that I'm in a situation where you can stay home with the kids and I can work.
And homeschool.
And homeschool.
Too. So, we decided to homeschool. We decided to homeschool the kids before we moved here. Like when our daughter was like 4, she was in preschool for a little while, but it was it was just a little fun preschool for friends. But then we moved here in 2019, and we knew we were homeschooling before COVID, but it definitely set it in stone during COVID.
Yeah.
So, and living out kind of far away. There's a school bus that comes where we live and everything, and kids on our street and our neighborhood do go to school, go to the public schools, but we knew that we wanted to homeschool the kids and know what they were being taught and know who they were socializing with and what was going on. So it's just keeping them safe, protected, and especially in those vulnerable early years.
Yeah. And thank God we're in Idaho. We're surrounded by lots of like-minded people. So it's very easy to live the lifestyle we're living and just, not be chastised for our beliefs. It's totally embraced here. So yeah, and there's and plus the society, well, especially here more than anywhere, I'm sure. But like I was saying, like the culture is changing so much, and which is kind of paving the way and creating an environment to embrace families like ours. We don't feel so alienated. Whereas I'm sure like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, even homeschooling, you're just a total weirdo.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I didn't know any homeschoolers.
Yeah, I didn't know any
We
homeschoolers.
weren't homeschooled, so.
And I wish we were, we were talking about that. Like, I tell my kids all the time, because they have no idea. They don't know the difference. Like, you guys have no idea, like, what I would have done to have been homeschooled.
When they complain about having to do some school,
Yeah.
a little bit of school at the table, and they don't want to do it, it's like, you could go to school all day if you want.
Yeah.
So.
We just weren't learning anything. All the teachers were doing, I mean, that's another story for another day, but they just, the school is either going to make you or break you. And chances are it's going to break you. Like if you're not the compliant, perfect student, because what they're trying to create in schools, the public school system, is just workers. They just want workers. And if you're like, if you're an outside thinker, like a right brain person or something, like you're going to get ruined. They're going to put you in special ed and call you an idiot, and that'll be the end. And it's so sad, like, because I knew so many like highly, highly intelligent kids that they were destroyed. Their self-esteem, their self-image, their self-worth was destroyed by the schools. Yeah. Because the schools just weren't interested in that. They're like, we're just do things one way. We teach one way.
If you're ADD, too hyperactive, they label you, they send you home, they put you in special ed or whatever, and it's just natural. It's a natural thing, especially for little boys to be active, to not want to sit still all day when they're 6.
Or a kid that's going through terrible stuff at home, and his mind is just totally preoccupied with the terror that's going on at home and all the terrible stuff that's going on in their personal life. They can't focus. There was a lot of those kids. I could tell, like in special ed, they were kids who were coming from broken, traumatized homes, and the last thing they care about is getting an A, bringing home an A. Who's going to care about an A, at their home? And
the kids. I don't think the kids are learning as much in public school as people think they're learning either. They're just putting them on computers really early, and they're just not learning as well. They're not learning the way that I feel like they should be learning. I mean, I saw a video of this girl who said she has a corporate job. She's older, 30s or something, and said she can't spell at all because she grew up on a computer in school. and her computer spelled everything for her. So she literally doesn't know how to spell anything. So she had to look up how to sound out words because they didn't teach that. They stopped teaching so many things when they put you on a computer. And so we want our kids to know how to do these things and learn more classical education.
The kids don't even know how, they're not even teaching cursive in the school.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way I would send, the more I hear about the stuff that's going on, and I don't know. You learned a lot about it during the COVID times. When they started putting masks on kids, I think that was another part of it, and where I was like, there's no way. Okay, that like I was just done. I'm like, these public schools are going to go so far, like force these kids to work with a mask on all day long and put them in a bubble. It was like some extreme stories
and stuff. And
it was so
cubicles.
bad. The horror stories that were coming out of the, what was going on to these kids at schools, and it really put a lot of strain on friendships that I had with people who had kids in public school, and I was like getting, pissed and like resentful at my friends. Like, how could you possibly allow your children to go through that? Like, pull them out of school, especially my friends that weren't doing anything. I was like, you could homeschool. You're not even working.
Yeah.
Take your kid out. Why would you let your kid stay in a school? Not only are they not teaching them anything, and they're teaching them all sorts of degenerate stuff and all the terrible stuff that was going on during recess. But then it's like, you're going to let your kid just be in a mask all day, and then just listening to the justification, and I would just listen, and I'm like, I can't, like, this is,
it's one thing if you can't, rough. If you financially can't, and you have two working parents to pay the bills, and, that's one thing. But certain cases where you have a parent home, I have friends too that, don't work, and their kids were going to school during this time, and it's hard. So.
Yeah, that's just one of my lines in the sand. I don't have that many lines in the sand, but that's one of them. Like, when it comes to kids, it's like I always say, like, when it comes to like free speech, like, everything should be on the table except for anything that has to do with sexualizing kids or just hurting kids physically or something, completely off the table. But everything else should be definitely able to talk about. But that's just one of those areas where it's just like, especially when you're a parent, like, if you're a parent and you're not willing to literally die for your children before you let anybody so much as harm a hair on their head, like, something's wrong with you, and I was listening to parents justify their kids being in a terrible situation. And like, that's just sick. You're just mentally ill. And they, and they were doing it because it was like, they didn't want to lose their job. It was like money. It was like, yeah, I know that my kid's going through this terrible time, but I'm not going to be able to afford, my brand new truck. I'm not going to be able to, afford all this awesome stuff that I have. And they were literally putting money ahead of their kids. And not just like money to eat, like expenditure money. Materialism. Yeah. It wasn't like, if I don't do this, we're all going to starve to death. It was like, if I homeschool them, I'll have to get a crappier car. Yeah. Like, that's what it equaled. It's like, I'm not willing to do that. And it, woke me up to a lot. It just got hard. But, and it went the other way too. It was like, especially when the vaccines started coming, and that definitely tore a lot of families apart. There's some family members in our family that completely turncoated and betrayed our family in a deep way. And I'll never forget that. There's a handful of family members who literally just decided, like, you're not part of our family anymore because you didn't get on board with this vaccine thing, or you just have the wrong political beliefs. And it was like, you can't be a part of our life.
Yeah.
I was just like stunned. It was some family. I had close family that just like, really, I couldn't believe it. Ostracized us like somebody in a cult.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're on that side of the political sphere. You don't get to come and see my wedding. You don't get to come to our wedding. You don't get to come see our baby.
My brother decided, I have an older brother, he's 2 years older than me. He decided not to tell anybody whether or not he got the vaccine. So that, I mean, it was the biggest thing. Are you going to get it? Are you not going to get it? And he said, I'm not telling you. It's my decision, and I'm not telling you. I'm not sharing this with you. And I had family members who were so scared that they wouldn't be around anybody who was not vaccinated, and they'd say, hey, we want to see you, we want to visit with you. Have you, just let me know, have you gotten it? Have you gotten the vaccine? And he would just say, I'm not going to tell you. And they're like, well, that's too bad, because then I can't be around you. And he's like, well, that's your choice. You're going to choose that. That's fine. You can choose that if you want, but it's just,
because there was
very divisive.
Because there was extremes on both sides, and I think as time gone on, we can now see which side was right. But I mean, you had one side that was saying, if you get this thing, you're going to die. And the other side is saying, if you don't get this thing, you're going to die and you're going to kill everybody with you, and you should be in prison if you don't get this thing.
Yeah.
And the other, and the other side saying that it's going to kill you. So it definitely ripped a lot of people apart. So it makes sense why your brother would have been like, yeah, you know what? I'm not saying anything because I don't want to, because he knew, he was like, people are literally making decisions about, although we never, if somebody wanted to get it, like I wouldn't have been like, that's it, you're not part of the, I mean, I can imagine being so radical in my political beliefs that I would just shaft somebody.
Especially an older person who felt that they were, at risk or susceptible and they were scared or whatever. So.
Yeah, there were times in the beginning, like, because we had a newborn during the height of it, where this was like before the vaccine had even come out. Yeah. So this was like when nobody knew how deadly this thing was. We didn't know what was going on. Yeah. And we had a newborn. And so that was rough. And we were like right in the middle too, where we were supposed to have this big family get together, and we had to like call it off because we were like, we don't know what's going on. Kind of like we just wait until things subside and we figure out what this thing is.
On both sides. We didn't really want vaccinated people coming over. We didn't want unvaccinated people coming over. We were kind of like, you could be carrying something. You could be carrying something. We don't really know what's going on, but we don't want to risk it.
Yeah, this was like when the sheltering in place thing was happening.
Yeah.
And they were like, just don't go out. And people were like sterilizing their groceries and mail. It was at the height of that. And nobody really knew. But then as things moved forward and you kind of, you get a little sense of the direction of things.
That was before the masks even.
Yeah, it was before the masks.
Before the masks even started too.
Yeah, so we just didn't.
What is this?
Yeah, we were just like, you didn't know. Like, is it a psyop or is it legit? Like, you just didn't know. And when you have children, you're just like, I'm just gonna take the safe route here. Just rather be safe than sorry, and we'll just shelter in place and do the sterilization thing.
Yeah, we kind of postpone the family reunion thing and.
Yeah, and that pissed a lot of people off.
Further notice. Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm grateful for all the decisions we did make. Yeah. And most of the decisions we made were not making decisions. That was like most of the best things that we did were just not taking action. Going, I'm just not gonna. I'm not going to say, go
wait this one out. And
I'm just going to just check out and not do anything. And just not doing anything was like the best always, I'm just going to be loving, have faith, and do nothing. And that always, worked out, seemed to always work out in the best for us. But I'm just looking at my notes here. We pretty much gone through most of this stuff. We did go through the marriage thing, and I mean, obviously a big part of raising kids is is your marriage, your relationship with God. That's probably the most important thing. A lot of people don't realize that. They think we'll just raise our children, we'll focus on the kids. And that's not, you should be focused on your marriage.
Yeah, marriage, the triangle, right? God's at the top of the triangle, and then the husband and the wife, and it's a three-sided triangle.
Yeah.
And if any of those are missing, if one of them drops out, it falls apart. It can't be sustained. Right. So you have to have God and the husband and the wife all interlinked, right? With God in the top.
Yeah. And I think that's like what so many parents do, where people go wrong and why things fall apart, is they make their kids the focus. Because it's so easy to do. It's so like you have your children and they're like the biggest, greatest blessing. Like, especially you have your firstborn, you're like, oh my God, it's like the greatest gift. And you're just hyper focused, on your child. And you don't think about your marriage. Like, I just care about this new human being now. Yeah. And this innocent human being, and my life is totally focused here. And the marriage suffers.
Yeah, so many people don't understand that. How do you put your spouse above your children? That doesn't make sense. You can't neglect your children. It's like, no, you don't neglect your children. Nobody says you neglect your children, but your marriage has to come first for your children to be safe and healthy and happy, and
And that was such an unnatural thing for us too, coming from where we came from, because
it wasn't easy.
Yeah, it was still a struggle.
Children
first, yeah. I remember the first thought that went through my head when our daughter was born was, she's going to grow up in a loving home. Like, I want love to feel comfortable. I don't want love and hugs to feel awkward, and that's kind of how it was, unfortunately, in my house. Even though my house is good, it wasn't perfect, but that was one of the things. I'm not sure why. We weren't affectionate. We weren't an affectionate family. And I remember seeing friends that did have affectionate families, and I just envied it, and I remember thinking, like, I want that. Like, that's the one thing that was missing. I hated feeling like awkward when I'd hug my mom or dad or my sister, and so that was I'm like, I'm not going to bring that into my family. And it took a little while to get comfortable, but it took about 2 years. And then I'm like, can't stop hugging everyone. They're like, leave me alone.
I feel like my family was more like loving and affectionate, like while we were young, and then you get to a certain age and it's kind of like, okay, that's enough, kind of goes away. But
yeah,
hopefully we can keep it going.
But you have a lot of, yeah, you have a lot of material in that area. And there's things that were like a bigger struggle for me, and things are a bigger struggle for you. And
yeah, my parents did get divorced when I was like 12 or 13 or something. So,
yeah, and that's just rough. And it's one of those, and especially when it happens early on, you can't even digest what happens. And it takes years of therapy and praying, to ever get through that stuff and try to repair the damage from that. Because you develop, when you go through any type of trauma, you develop like an attitude and outlook on it to adjust to it so that you can move on with your life. And then it just becomes a part of like your view on everything. And it's so hard to go back and sift that stuff out because it's become so ingrained and intertwined with everything. And you don't even realize it's there. It's like, remember this guy saying it's almost like, picture it as like a thread, like a red thread in a big piece of fabric. You got to try to identify it, and extract it. But yeah, we're sifting through that stuff because you don't want to carry that damage. And I think that's one of the things that comes, from divorced families and from people I know that have were raised in those families, is just, you can't trust, you lose your trust. You lose like fit, you don't know how to
security.
love. Yeah, security, all kinds of things. So
yeah.
it just really makes a mess out of people. And that's why I think it's so important, you get married, you just do, that's what I was saying. It's like why marriage is so important, that you're clear on what marriage is. And by you becoming, you adopting biblical Christian values to that marriage and principles, you're going to be so much better off. Like that marriage is going to function so much better. And commitment goes a long way. You have to understand commitment and be committed in your heart. But just commitment alone isn't enough. You got to keep striving to like make that marriage stronger and stronger.
And understanding the purpose of marriage too, like, what is marriage and what's the purpose of marriage? Is marriage designed for you to make me happy, or for me to make you happy all the time,
Right.
or to be super loving every day. There's definitely going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be struggles, and that isn't what marriage is designed for.
No.
You want to be a team, and you want to definitely have visions and a plan, and but yeah, it's a family design. We're designed to have children, or raise a family, and to teach them.
Yeah. And it's really, it does go back to God, because if you don't have something bigger that transcends all of it, you don't have God in your life, something bigger than yourself to transcend all your petty little issues and problems, you're going to fail. If you don't have something bigger than yourself and your feelings to shoot for, it's going to fail. If your feelings and your beliefs are all you have, you're going to fall apart. Like people are going to let you down. And that's why, that's why I'm like, why I got sober. It's how I got sober, was with God. And it's really just comes down, it's why I became Christian. And it's not because, I didn't get sober because I wanted to be the best sponsor to people and be the best, big book guy and the most spiritual guy, the best at meditating, because there's that pressure, in AA, just like every religious kind of circle. I just didn't want to go back to hell. Our light just went out. I just didn't want to go back to drinking. That was it. I didn't, it's the same with Christianity. I didn't become Christian. I didn't go back to the church because I want to be a saint. I don't want to be the best, guy. I don't want to be the best at memorizing prayers. Like I just want my, I don't want to go back to living. I don't want to succumb to degeneracy and sin. I just don't want to go back to being dark. I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be a saint. I just don't want to go back to hell. That's, living in hell. So, but yeah, that's our marriage. Like Tina Turner said, what's love got to do with it?
But don't you want to strive for greatness so that you don't fall, because you fall good?
You want to make,
right? That's what you say.
Yeah, but it's the goal, I think, for me is just, I don't know, the goal for me in that area, maybe as it grows, I don't know. I mean, I'm still young, so I'm only halfway through my life here. But right now, that's the objective. It's like, I don't want to go back to darkness. And I'm, my life's good. I'm living in gratitude almost every day. I don't have depressing days anymore. I have distracting days where I can't focus, and that's like, gets a little annoying and gets frustrating. But no more depression, And so therefore, I'm grateful. And it's like the closer, I don't know, it's just like the closer you come to God, I just let that stuff happen. But I don't have any control over it. I feel like, I don't really have that much control over it at the end of the day, the outcomes, I guess. Because there's been a lot of things that I prayed for every day for years and years and years and years, and it never came true. And then all of a sudden one day I looked back and it was gone. That problem, that issue was just gone. And that's how it works. So I remember this guy saying, it's like the best line I ever heard. but he said, when you're working for God, the pay is shitty, but the benefits are priceless. And that's how it is. It's like the day-to-day, the pay is just crap, but the benefits, when it does finally come through, it's priceless. It's just, it's worth every day you suffered.
My class today at OCIA was actually about Catholic morality, and they were talking about how there's all these rules that they have to follow. Like people say, there's too many rules. There's too many, it's too hard. There's too many, rules basically that you have to follow, and it's just, I don't know. It's basically like, these are guidelines, rules that we're meant to follow. But if we follow these rules, they will make us happy, and they'll get us to heaven, and they'll get us, a good life, a happy life. Good results will come from following the rules and the, commandments and stuff like that. So it's just like with kids or anything, if you don't follow the rules, bad things will happen,
Yeah.
So we have to give our kids rules and guidelines so they don't get hurt and keep them safe. And that's the same thing with morality, is you follow these guidelines and these rules so that we can be happy, and so we ultimately get what God wants for us in the end.
And that is what we're instilling in our kids right now. I mean, we're taking on that as the approach. It's like our kids talk about getting married and having kids, and we're like, awesome.
Yeah. 7-year-old getting married.
Like, I'm going to get married, like, have lots of kids. I'm like,
our 4-year-old wants 10 kids. So, we want to have lots of kids.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We're all for it.
Yeah, everything will work itself out. I mean, so many people are like, I don't want to have kids right now. I can't afford it. Trust me, like, you look at all the people who are having kids right now, they're almost all broke. So have kids, You can't afford to not, I tell you, like, having kids is expensive. Try not having kids. I see those people that don't have kids, and they're like, I'm really happy that I don't have kids. I'm like,
and then don't have grandkids. And then,
I have a lot of customers that are just didn't, and they're just still trying to tell themselves like, oh, it's good. It's like
accepting,
whistling in the dark,
Wow.
And it's sad, and I know like family members that had, didn't have enough, and they were like, I wish I had more, and just upset, like deeply upset. Like, I wish that would almost be worse, is like if you just have one, because then what it's like to have kids, and you're like, oh, I should have had more kids. Because when you don't know, you're kind of just speculating, like, I'm glad, but deep down, like, that was not right. Because I knew, like, when I didn't have kids, I was thinking, like, because my life was so good. I was like single, my bills were paid, I was making good money, I was just totally playing the field, like happy as a clam. And I knew, I was like, this is, as fun as this is, I was like, this is not going to have a good ending, Because at least by that time, I knew what the road to a bad ending looked like. I knew what it smelled like. I knew everything about that road to a bad ending, because the road to a bad ending is very comfortable. It's that's usually the indicator. If you're very comfortable, and having a lot of fun, and getting all your needs met, that's
doing
probably
what feels right, feels good to you, and makes you happy, and
they say that, like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's also, the road to hell is it's paved with comfort and pleasure. Lots of pleasure, self-seeking. So I knew, I was like, I can't go, I know this is gonna have a bad ending. I'm gonna regret staying on this road. And I was at this crossroad. I'm like, and I called you. I'm like, we need to do this right now. Because like you and I were like off and on, and I just had this realization where I was like, I need to go this way.
I want to make a commitment. It was like, let's make a commitment to each other.
I remember that day, like, well, I don't think you knew what was going on, because for me, it was like, I knew I was like, um, I can't be living this lifestyle. I gotta make a run at a decent life. And so thankfully I knew who to call.
Yeah. Luckily for me.
Yeah, it was an easy choice.
Aw,
Yeah, so it's worked out. There was definitely struggles. It started out rough, but we buckled in.
yeah.
But the key, wouldn't you say, was like church
Yeah.
for sure?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to go to church and was trying to get him to come to the church this big church that was in the town we lived in. And did you ever go? Did you ever come, or did I just go with your mom maybe a couple times?
Yeah, I
and
went
it was
once.
it was just too much of like a motivational speaking, and like where the pastor was just kind of like the idol, and too much of like rock bands for us.
Yeah.
It wasn't our thing. It didn't feel right to us. Like it
Yeah.
just didn't feel spiritual enough and for
Yeah,
us,
there's
the
something
church we
missing.
were at. But if there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
Protestant churches, it just wasn't.
For us. But we knew.
Definitely was harder for him too,
Yeah.
especially coming from a Catholic upbringing, for that to feel.
Yeah, and I wasn't.
She
was the one that pushed it. Like I was I was just like, you kept saying like, this is what we need, and I'm like, I was just not feeling it.
It's what I needed anyway.
Yeah, and I'm like, we're gonna go. I'm like, we're gonna go for a little while, and then, because I was like thinking like she's like just trying to make herself feel better about something. And I'm like, this isn't going to work. It's, and I'm going to go to church. I'm going to become resentful at all the people in the church. Like, I know how this goes. And then I'm going to get resentful at the church again. And at the, and theology, I'm going to be, same old, and become a resentful Catholic or something. Like, but then we went and it was like, thank God. And then the struggles are still there. I think everybody has those things. Like I went to that church and like, there'll be people that will make you feel bad, There'll be people that'll say things that make you feel like you're not good at it or whatever, and you'll start getting opinionated and go, and be tempted to like leave the church. Like there's so many temptations, and it's usually other people that drive you out. And I remember in AA, there was a common saying in AA. They always say principles before personalities.
Yeah.
They'd always say that, and for two reasons. One, you don't want some person driving you away, from what you're there to do. Like, I am here to get sober, adopt spiritual principles, and formulate a relationship with God and never drink again. That is my principle. That's my goal. That's my, my footing. That's my foundation. That's what I'm here to do, principles. And they go, don't let the personalities of somebody drive you away. The personalities of somebody drive you away from your principles. It's the same with church. And the other way is they used to also imply it principles before personalities, in the sense that you don't want some strong character like a preacher or a pastor or a priest to shift you away from the principles, teachings of God. That you have to be firm in the Bible, the Bible and the principles, and not be swept away from somebody who's good at talking, because there's people who will get into these institutions and just start to kind of swoop you away because their character is so captivating.
Yeah, maybe they'll start to follow a particular pastor or priest and like them so much that they're coming for them.
Yeah.
And then when they leave, maybe they move away, and someone else comes in, and you're like, I don't like this guy.
Yeah, I don't
want to
go to church anymore.
So, I mean, that's why the Catholic Church purposely has only allows them to stay 3-4 years or something, and then they rotate the priests around, so that you're not supposed to be going for a personality or a priest or their, and
it's hard. It's hard not to like, you get a priest, you're like, this guy's awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to suck when they have to leave.
Yeah.
Let me check the camera real quick. We're still good. Unbelievable.
And we lost a light, but hopefully it's still okay.
But I think we covered everything, don't you think?
Yeah, future of the future, maybe?
Yeah.
What is this?
I don't know. Hopefully I was putting this list together. I was thinking, gosh, this is kind of going to sound like a big, ugly black pill. I don't want to steer people away or make it sound like we're complaining or anything, because life is good. I definitely encourage, like, everybody, if you're young, have kids, man. Like, don't worry about it. Like, there's been a lot of people will go, I would never bring kids into this world. Like, there's been worse times, on this planet. Like, people were having kids during the bubonic plague, like, people were still, like, during Civil War, when people were getting blown up with cannons, and I mean, it was just mass death. Like, people were still having kids.
This is not the worst time.
Yeah, this is not the worst time.
This time.
It's a pretty good time.
Yeah.
And things can turn around. Like, the evil force, the other thing is, like, the evil forces that are pushing all this crap in our culture, it is a tiny group of people.
Yeah.
We far outnumber these people. Not that I'm implying some violent overthrow or anything, but I'm just saying, like, it's small, and I think the first plan of action to overcoming this and fighting against this and winning is exposing these people for who they are, and that's starting to happen, like, in mass. And these people are starting to see, like, our cover's blown. They're starting to, like, identify us, and maybe we need to knock it off a little bit. So,
Yeah.
Cut. What happened?
Oh, okay.
Okay, good.
Good job. So.
See that? They're taking care of themselves. She got her own splinter out.
Yeah, our youngest just popped up here. So, but yeah, kids are hard, but they're amazing too. Hard is good. Hard makes you stronger. So they're helping us grow in character too. So having kids is a good thing, even though there's challenges with having kids. It's worth it.
Yeah.
So, I wish we could have more. We're kind of too old.
I think we're past that.
We should have started younger, but I'm grateful that we were able to have 3 kids. So.
Yeah, I miss sleeping.
Yeah, sleep is nice.
I want to be able to sleep again.
Yeah. We're very permissive. Is that what you call it? They always come into our room, and
every night.
It's too hard for us to just be like, sorry, you're having nightmares, go back to your room.
Yeah, I'm like, you want to pick up our 80-pound child and bring her back to the bedroom?
Yeah.
3 in the morning.
We get stronger.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah. So, but now it's all working out.
All the ages are fun too. Something new and different. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Get married, have kids.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us, you guys. Hopefully we'll have another show out soon. Either way, we'll let you know, but our schedule is so unpredictable. It's hard to schedule these things and lock Jenny down to committing to anything. So it's really just a matter of getting her to commit. No, kidding.
Timing.
Yeah, just timing. Lives. There's so much going on with homeschooling and then the 4-H. And the older the kids get, the more things they get involved in, and then it's crazy. But we'll get another episode out sooner or later. Let us know in the comment section what you might want to hear us talk about next time, since we already covered how we got here, getting married, how we met, financial stuff. Now we covered the kids, raising kids thing. So whatever you guys want to hear next time, let us know in the comment section, and we can talk about that. But
yeah, sounds good.
Until the next time, you guys, we don't have a closeout line yet. We'll just say goodbye.
See you next time.
Yes, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.